Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. I would ask you to please take your seats. We will begin our meeting of the Standing Committee on Transportation, Infrastructure, and Communities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, we'll pursue a study of infrastructure and smart communities. Today, we are pleased to welcome more witnesses. Mr. Martin Lessard, Managing Director of the Town of Victoriaville, via video conference. Mr. Bruce Lazenby, Head of Business Development, formerly Chief Executive Officer of Invest Ottawa. Mr. James McKay, Vice President Sales for McKay Meters. And finally, Mr. Guy Picard, Director General from the Société de Transport de Laval by video conference from Laval. Welcome to all of our witnesses. We have one witness who's a little late, but hopefully in the next few moments he will arrive. So we will begin without much further ado. And we will start with Mr. Lessard via video conference, if he is on the line. Yes, I'm here. There, we should get your image shortly for committee members. Can you hear me, Mr. Berthold? Sure, we can hear you very well, and now we can even see you. You have 5 minutes, sir, to make your presentation.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Bonjour.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you, Mr. Berthold. You're a former colleague from the municipal world. I would also like to say hello to Mr. Alain Reyes, our regional MP. Good morning, Mr. Reyes. I don't see you, but I know that you're there. So I was asked to speak to this committee about what is involved in smart cities, which are not major urban centers, so smaller cities. This is a fairly vast area, smart cities. But in outlying areas, the issues of utmost concern have to do with skilled employees, skilled workers, because they're the ones who help us implement our various projects. In Victoriaville, we decided in the last few years to create the position of new media advisor. So we hired someone with expertise to help us implement certain projects. But overall, our needs exceed what this one expert can provide us with. Of course, smaller municipalities need to make the right investments. We need to invest in hardware, in hard infrastructure, basic infrastructure, which will help us become smart cities. And this is an issue still of concern to us. In Victoriaville, and in fact, I've sent the committee my notes. When you look at the development of a smart city, for us, there are 6 underlying aspects. 1, governance. The smart citizens, smart mobility, smart housing, smart environment. So a smaller city can grow. And in Victoriaville, in the area of governance, we have improved our ability of communicating with our citizens. We've improved our online systems. We've improved our webcasting capacity. So on the governance side, things are going well. Now, moving on to smart citizens. Of course, we want citizens to become more engaged. So we've developed online platforms. We're still working on doing that, and we've been able to achieve that with existing resources. Again, That's going well. We also have a site called myideas.ca where citizens can give their opinions, advice on various projects which have been implemented by the city of Victoriaville. Then we've got environment and housing. When it comes to the environment, we use sensors and smart grids to do better when it comes to managing our networks. So medium-sized cities can do more when it comes to creating a smarter environment. And then there's housing. And again, we've done well through various platforms. Moving on to smart mobility and a smart economy. Now, these depend on basic infrastructure, which costs more. We need to have very good systems, very good applications, strong infrastructure to meet the expectations and the needs of citizens and to help us meet our objectives. Our objectives in terms of becoming a smart city. So in Victoriaville, we're moving forward. We've made progress. We have electric charging stations. We are focused on sustainable development, and we've been able to make progress in that regard. I'm sorry, sir, we have so many questions for you, and other witnesses would like to speak, so we'd ask you to conclude. There's still a lot to do, and we need more financing, and we need to support our companies so they can engage in online business. Thank you, sir. Mr. Lazenby, thank you so much. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Of urbanization, we sometimes think is a third world issue. And on average, there's about 1 million people a week that move from the country to the city in places like India and elsewhere. But the same thing's happening in North America. We're finding the rural communities are getting smaller, and the percentage of GDP coming from those communities continues to decline. And nobody's thinking of a way to put more labor into a farm. They're thinking about ways to take labor out of a farm. So when we look at that, we look at the infrastructure that we need in cities and the jobs that we're going to find in the cities. And between artificial intelligence and robotics, we're heading towards what they call singularity, where it's a whole different way of looking at things. Throughout that, one thing is going to remain true, and that is that we need very efficient ways to move massive amounts of data around, because everything we're looking at moving forward is data. If you think about how we built our initial infrastructure, if I had a home and I wanted water, I dug a well. And then my neighbor dug a well, and his neighbor dug a well, and finally we said, you know what, maybe it makes more sense to do this as a utility and have it managed by the government. And so we did that. And then we did that with roads, and we did that with rail. And we did that with electricity. Nobody thinks about building their own electricity. Nobody digs their own well anymore. But everybody's still putting in their own bandwidth. So we've got Rogers digging trenches and laying fiber. We got Bell digging trenches and laying fiber. I was at a meeting recently with the head of OC Transpo and the head of Hydro Ottawa, and I said, are you each laying fiber? And they said, yes. And I said, did you know the other was? And they said, no. And I said, you've each dug up the same street 3 times, putting glass in the ground. And fiber optics is the key to building smart infrastructure. It is the basis. You can't do anything if you don't have that, and we don't have enough of it, and we don't have a strategy for it. There should be a simple policy that says one provider for that glass, and it does not need to be a for-profit product. It can be government managed just like water. What you do with the water when it comes out the other end is something that industries can manage on their own. But we have to start thinking of bandwidth as a utility and one that therefore should be managed by government. If we can get past that hurdle, the efficiencies are phenomenal. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Lazenby.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lazenby. Mr. McKay, 5 minutes, please.
To the committee for having McKay Meters here and invited to speak to you all today. My name is James McKay. I'm very honored to be here today representing my company, McKay Meters. I'm a third-generation business owner whose head office and worldwide manufacturing plant is based in a beautiful rural community called New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. McKay Meters has proudly been in business for just under 60 years, and our product can be found on every continent and in over 20 countries. McKay Meters is a parking technology company that specializes in the design, manufacturing, distribution of parking hardware, along with the development of parking-related software platforms that not only control said hardware, but also help our clients, who are mainly towns, cities, universities, and hospitals, create an educated and efficient approach to their parking systems. We use real-time data that is generated at our meters to provide financial information, maintenance alerts, map-based reporting, along with an array of important analytics that help our clients drive their systems more efficiently than the traditional practices. The parking industry has made significant technological progress over the past 5 to 7 years. It is certainly safe to say that the parking meters are no longer dumb or stupid. The industry as a whole has seen many large, multinational Fortune 50 companies enter with varying degrees of success. It may have something to do with the revenues that are linked to any parking system are typically the second largest revenue generation for any community. Or it may be the technology that has now arrived into our industry. With the new buzzword smart city, coupled with the technology now available, the former simple parking meter has changed significantly, and in my opinion, one of the keys to kick off not only to kick off but fund smart city initiatives throughout the country. And when I mention smart city, I don't necessarily just mean city. That's the buzzword. It should really be smart community. All right. It could be smart town, smart hospital, smart community. So when I am talking about this is large, small, medium-sized communities are able to use this type of technology to kick off their smart initiatives. Well, most are still wondering what makes their city smart or how to make their city smart. My company is providing cities with at least some of the answers. We produce the most technologically advanced and greenest smart parking meters in the world. We're using very efficient solar-based power supplies that render our meter battery neutral. We're using metal equivalent materials and recycled materials that are increasing our security while reducing our carbon footprint on many levels. We use both wireless GPS and Wi-Fi networks that are available to us for real-time information and alert notifications. And we do all of this while adhering to the rigid, stringent PCI, PADSS security standards covering secure transfer of credit card payments, FCC and IC standards covering the secure transfer, the certification of our radio and electronic equipment in both Canada and the United States, and also ISO 9001 manufacturing quality control standards. Given most of my clients are municipalities in North America, we have had the unique privilege to work so closely with so very many progressive cities out there. As we learn, or as they learn, we learn with them, which is fantastic. In the U.S., San Francisco, who is considered one of the most progressive cities in America, is a client of ours, and we are helping them make their parking system smarter by using our products. Also, Columbus, who recently won the U.S. DOT $40 million Smart City Challenge after competing against 77 other cities in the United States, is also a client of ours, and we are working with them to make their city smarter. In Canada, I have clients from coast to coast, such as Vancouver, Moncton, and Victoriaville. These cities are eager for technology, and we are helping them put the latest and greatest on their streets. With this said, McKay is helping cities both near and far become smarter and greener by using Canadian-made hardware and Canadian-developed software. We bring smart technology to the streets, allowing unique customer experience on the front end while providing smart analytics software on the back end. Since our products generate revenue, and that is a good point, our products generate revenue, they are the perfect product to start with and fund any smart city strategy out there. We do not have to look far for this technology. It is local, it is proven, and it is established. Smart and green do not have to be more expensive, and on the contrary. I am very much looking forward to any question that you might have, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Mackay.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKay. And now we're heading to Laval for Mr. Guy Picard's presentation. Mr. Picard, 5 minutes, please. Thank you very much, sir. I've sent a presentation. I don't know if you've received it. Yes, we do have it, and so we will be able to follow you more easily. That's great. Thank you for this opportunity to take part in your meeting. I'd also like to say hello to the member for Alphen-Pelham, Mr. Iacono. Now, at the STL, mobility is part of the DNA of our public transit corporation. There are several definitions of what smart transportation means. For us, it means enhancing the client experience to make it more sustainable through information technology. I will quickly go over some of the projects that we have implemented and which puts us amongst the top North American leaders when it comes to smart transportation. And then I will talk about potential applications for the future. So our Transportation Commission is in Laval. It's just outside of Montreal. It's a medium-sized transit company. We have about 900 employees and 21 million trips per year. If you look at the next slide, you'll see that the first area we invested in was information for our passengers. We're implementing 3 projects. In 2010, the first one was real-time information. Each of our vehicles was outfitted with a GPS so that people knew when their bus or other type of public transit would arrive. And we have screens in the street so people can actually see where their buses are. In 2012, we made sure that everyone using our paratransit services would know about 10 minutes in advance when their bus or vehicle would arrive. After that, we decided to take things even further, and we are developing in collaboration with a company that works with people with developmental disabilities. We're working on a program to help these people to use public transit by giving them an STL companion, if you will, so they would know when to get on a bus, when to get off, and how to get to their destination. And if a passenger got lost along the way, they would receive, an alert would be sent to the client center, who would rush out and help this passenger. At the next slide, you see a project that we're implementing right now. All these little points here, it's 227 intersections in Laval where people will be able to see when their bus will be arriving. A bus arriving late will be displayed on the screen. There might be a green light. And if buses are not arriving based on the schedule, it'll be possible to see when exactly which bus will arrive. And in fact, this already exists. And on the next slide, and I'm not going to go over all of these elements because I could speak to each of these elements for quite a while. Payment through credit cards, variable approaches, but I just want to talk about the second bullet here. We want to have integrating sustainable mobility solutions. For instance, the hotel industry was hit by Airbnb. The taxi industry was hit by Uber. The music industry through Spotify. These things came out of the blue. And so we are trying to see what is going to hit us as a transit company. In Finland, there's an interesting concept called the MAAS, mobility service, where there is an integrator which brings together ride-sharing solutions, payment solutions, public transit, and bicycle sharing services. So all of these different transit systems could be confusing, but in Finland, they've brought them all together under one smart approach. So I think that here in Canada, we, including governments, have to have access to all of the actors and data which can be integrated to make the most streamlined, efficient system possible for passengers and citizens. Mr. Picard, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions. I'm sorry I have to cut you off here. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you all of our witnesses for their presentations. So we will immediately go to questions, and Mr. Alain Reyes will begin for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for taking the time to show up today and to tell us about your initiatives and to share your expertise with us in your respective fields. My first question is for Mr. Lessard. Mr. Lessard and I know each other well. He was my Director General when I was working for the city in Victoriaville, so I'm quite familiar with all of the projects ongoing in that city. But I'm also familiar with the small and medium-sized cities are encountering. Mr. Lessard, you talked about 2 issues which you will soon have to deal with as a city. First, the funding of infrastructure. Second, online commerce. First question, infrastructure. We know that the federal government now wants to invest billions of dollars in basic infrastructure. So what citizens think about when they think of infrastructure, they think of roads and bridges and tunnels and concrete, but nobody really thinks about technological infrastructure, which is something you all referred to in one way or another. When an RFP is put out, it doesn't usually include IT provisions. So my question to you is this: should the government establish technological standards, just like it is incorporating environmental standards in its RFPs? But should we take into account technological or smart technologies in RFPs? This is something cities should do when they want to work on becoming smart cities. Thank you very much. That's an excellent question. Canada is a huge country. So if we were to impose these kinds of technological standards from one end of the country to the other, well, at first glance, that might seem too big. It might seem too vast for the reality of our cities on the ground. I don't know if cities would be able to implement such a standard coast to coast. In the case of municipalities, what we usually want is more independence. We want to be able to make choices, including technological choices. And this would help us to compete, or rather, this would help us to put out RFPs to get the best deal possible for our citizens. In fact, that question has never really been put to me, but we haven't really thought about the need for having a single technological standard. I'm sure there are advantages to that, but given that technologies are evolving so quickly, perhaps it might be a good idea, again, to let municipalities have more leeway so they can make the choices that are right for them. I have a second question, which is along the same lines. There are federal programs, and do you feel that existing programs give you more leeway so that you can bring about projects that would make you a smarter city? Or do you believe that the federal government is too controlling? There are 3 levels of government. Do you think you have enough freedom Or do you think there should be more decentralization, which would allow you to be more free and then be accountable after the fact for whatever decisions you make? Well, Mr. Reyes, I know that you were a mayor in a previous life and president of the Union of Quebec Municipalities. I know that you're very familiar with this issue and you're familiar with the position of Quebec's towns about this. We believe that any program that gives more freedom to cities is good. Take, for instance, the gas tax. Now, the gas tax is an excellent example of a program which allows cities to make the right choices for them. This way, cities know exactly how much money they'll be getting. There are some limitations to the gas tax program, but they've been mitigated to a certain point. And therefore, cities really like the program because it gives them more freedom. And I think that is the right approach going forward. Cities are creatures of the province, but they are the closest to their citizens, and we're asked to consult with our citizens to find out what the needs of citizens are. Cities are asked to participate in the democratic process, and therefore cities need to have a say in how money is spent. Thank you. You also talked about online commerce. What are the challenges facing cities these days when more and more people are buying online, especially the younger generations? How should we support municipalities so they can deal with e-commerce? Well, I briefly spoke about that subject earlier. I'm very passionate about it. Our companies in smaller towns really haven't started engaging in e-commerce, and I think that's an issue which needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Mr. Iacono for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you to our witnesses for being here this morning to share with us their expertise in the area of smart cities. My first question is for Mr. Picard. Sir, in listening to what you were saying, it seems that you want legislation to help harmonize all of the technologies that are out there in order to turn a city into a smart city. What exactly do you mean by that? Well, what I was trying to say is that in several U.S. cities today, there are private service providers, such as Uber, Lyft, and others. And these service providers can suddenly arrive on the scene, and they can also cannibalize our existing customers. They enter a very lucrative business. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we need to coordinate what those private companies are doing and what public transit companies are doing. Therefore, I think that so roads and streets are a public good, and anyone wanting to do business, which is the business of carrying people on these public goods, these companies have to provide their data to governments so governments can also improve their own systems. I don't think we can ignore these new players. These new players have to be seen not only not as opponents, but complementary services, especially for the last kilometers a person has to cover to get to their destination. And therefore, these private service providers have to provide their data. For now, they jealously guard their information. But if somebody is going to offer a means of transportation, well, data has to be shared, and that will make it more efficient. In Laval, how has the private sector invested in research and development in the area of transit? Can you give us some concrete examples? Sure. So the city of Laval and the Co-op Taxi company is developing a partnership to develop applications to help them, like make life easier for passengers. So, for instance, somebody might take a cab or share a cab with someone to the bus station, and then they can hop on the bus. So we're really thinking about the future of transportation. We are also building partnerships with Communauté, which is a car sharing service, and the taxi cooperative. Again, we're trying to bring on board the various players to eliminate the chaos. Right now, there's chaos on our bridges, but in future, we want to streamline transit. In your view, what are the most important lessons learned if a city wants to become a smart city? What do we have to focus on? What do we have to change? I think we have to keep the needs of passengers top of mind. We want to provide the best service, the most efficient service possible to passengers, and we have to find creative solutions. There's been a lot of technological innovation in the city of Laval. A smart city is first and foremost a city led by smart leaders who leverage existing technology. Now, talking about Laval, you say you're using technology to a great extent. Do you believe that services other than public transit could use the same technological approach you've applied to transit? Oh, absolutely. Already, the system where we prioritize streetlights so buses can go more efficiently is being applied to car traffic. And that way, the fluidity of car traffic has been improved for Laval residents. In your view, Mr. Laval, what ranking does Laval have in terms of being a smart city? For instance, does it rank higher than Montreal or Ottawa? Well, I can't really answer your question more specifically, but in terms of public transit, I am convinced that we are in the top 5 in North America. What are the next steps your city needs to take to deploy smart technologies? Where do you see yourself in the next 10 or 15 years? How do you see the public transit commission or situation evolving in Laval? Well, the way I see it is that we would have transit packages. A person would buy such a package and then could use taxis or buses or their car, or use a car sharing services in combination. That could also depend on whether a person is going to work or going to another destination. We're also starting to think about driverless cars. What about driverless buses? I think it's something we also have to start thinking about. The advantage to driverless buses, is that their routes are predictable, and often they drive on reserved lanes. So we're starting to think about driverless public transit. That's not going to happen overnight. But again, driverless buses, smart buses, using dedicated lines is part of what we're thinking about. Well, thank you very much. I can see committee members have reacted to the idea of driverless buses. Mr. Aubin for 6 minutes. Okay.
Monsieur Mackey, puisque en vous écoutant, il m'est venu l'idée suivante, et je me suis dit, si moi j'ai eu l'idée, c'est que des millions de personnes l'ont eu avant moi.
I thought of something, and I told myself, if I thought of this, others must have thought of it too. Often we're asked to change our behavior or to stop for lunch in a restaurant where we can plug our car to recharge it. And I know that I'm going to lose time when I put money into a parking meter. Have you thought of parking meters where we could also plug in our electric cars? Or does that already exist?
are talking about something that we are very much in the middle of at the moment. There's a very unique relationship between charging and parking. Essentially, they go hand in hand. And what McKay has done is we're in the prototype stage of a parking meter that actually does charge your vehicle as well. So there are situations where you cannot resell electricity as a city, but what you can do is charge for parking and provide the electricity for free. So what we can do in our parking equipment is when payment is rendered, it can turn on a charger. When the payment essentially expires, the charger turns off. So what we can do is we can offer you a unique piece of equipment, and there is not one in the industry right now that is parking based with the means of the general public being able to pay for it. And what I mean there is not using a closed loop system where you have to sign up and get a membership card, but one that you can go to the meter, pull out your wallet, use your Visa, MasterCard coins, cash, and actually pay for the charging or parking, whatever you're looking for, yeah.
Merci.
You're welcome.
Ma deuxième...
Thank you. My next question is for Mr. Lazenby. In your presentation, you said something that struck me because since the start of this study, we've been hearing about very interesting technology, but we need to be more intelligent in our way of coordinating all of these applications, which create huge differences between cities who are already intelligent and other towns where there is barely internet service. So what would be the steps to develop an intelligent city? If you don't mind, I will answer in English because my English is better than my French.
The board of the Intelligent Community Forum out of New York City, you may know them as the one that announced the 21 smartest cities every year and then the top 7 and then finally the most intelligent cities. So we have a process for evaluating. Where we began that process was simply measuring bandwidth. If you're connected, you have the infrastructure in place to be able to do this. But that infrastructure has got to be coordinated. So I talked earlier about roads and other utilities. What kind of a car do you drive, sir?
Un Legacy, Subaru.
A Subaru. So I'm sorry, you can't drive on the Toyota roads or the Ford roads, only the Subaru roads. And the more roads Subaru builds, the better your life is going to be. That's insane. None of us would ever expect that. But it used to be that way back in the day. If I built a road, it was my road. And if you wanted to ride on my road, you had to pay me to ride on my road. And I could decide who could and who couldn't ride on my road. That was back at the time of Confederation. Well, of course, we realized that was insane. So we stopped doing that. So most recently, I joined one of the largest land developers and builders in the city of Ottawa, a regional group. And one thing that surprises me is when we're building a big residential, we're building a 3,000 home residential area right now. And the city's going to tell us exactly how much parkland we need, exactly how long the roads need to be, exactly how high the curbs need to be, exactly where the sidewalks need to be, exactly how much power we need to put in, where we can put those power lines, where we can't put them in, exactly the amount of water that has to go in. But they're silent on bandwidth. But bandwidth is the new utility. It's the new energy. It's the new infrastructure upon which everything else is going to have to sit. Mr. McKay, with his parking meters, has got a big bandwidth this year, I'm sure, and probably pays a fortune in connectivity through Rogers or Bell or somebody else. It is crazy, in my opinion, that we have not yet said, you know what, we need to control this, we need to regulate this. I spent 20 years in government, and one of the questions we always had was, what could government do versus what should government do? And I think what we all have agreed to is that government should be making sure that the infrastructure is in place that the private sector can then build on. But the infrastructure part that we're missing right now is that bandwidth. As I said the other day, it was comical if it wasn't sad that Hydro Ottawa, OC Transpo, Bell, TELUS, Rogers were all digging up the same streets, laying fiber side by side that we're not sharing amongst each other. It's crazy. The best cities in the world are doing that. Chattanooga is now, they call themselves Gig City. Now they're calling themselves 10 Gig City because they can provide 10 gigabyte to the desktop for $200 a month. That is insane. The really crazy part was when they cut the ribbon on that about a year ago, my board chair, Dave Rotanja, from Ottawa was there cutting the ribbon. Why? Because those switches are made in Ottawa, but they're being deployed in Chattanooga. They're being deployed in Chattanooga by the Power Corporation. So it was the guys who own the telephone lines, who own all the rights of way, who laid the fiber. The biggest expense was their legal fees suing Comcast, because Comcast was trying to get them to stop from doing it. And I think if there's one thing the federal government does have control over is that CRTC ruling on how we can find a way to take the issue of bandwidth proprietary locations off the table and realize that we need to treat it just like water and roads and everything else.
Monsieur Lazenby, je vous remercie beaucoup. Nous, on a une seule voix, puis c'est tour à tour. Donc, c'est maintenant le tour à Monsieur Fraser pour 6 minutes.
Great, and thanks very much. I'll begin with Mr. McKay. One of the aspects of the study that I don't think we've really touched on as much is not just the ability of small communities to become smart communities, but the ability of companies based in small communities to take part in the economic benefits of the so-called smart economy. Mr. McKay, could you perhaps elaborate on some of the challenges as a small town business that you face trying to take part in the small smart economy, and maybe suggest what the federal government could do to assist companies trying to grow in this industry?
Certainly, thanks for the answer, for the question. Certainly, definitely some challenges being based in a community of 9,000, working with cities such as San Francisco, but also as towns the size of mine, like New Glasgow of 9,000. The big thing for us really is funding, and whether it comes out of privately held companies' pockets or if it's pushed for by the municipal level that we're with and talking towards. So, if the challenge is always the funding that the municipalities they may want to be quote unquote smart, however they don't know where to get the money to do so. I think if the federal government did help, did promote green initiatives, I know that is certainly something of buzzwords these days as well, green technology to not only help with the smart communities, but also help with the environment as well. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. So when you have unique products such as myself, or such as my own, that is smart, very smart, connected, but also very green, and it does save municipalities money. So if the government could help fund these communities with these types of products, they would definitely make some money, make some additional revenue.
So is this potentially a fund that a municipality or community organization could apply to say, look, we've got a bright idea, we don't know how to get it off the ground? Is that the model that you think would work?
I think so, and I think a lot of it is education. I think a lot of the smaller cities don't think that they can be smart. And it's on the contrary. Really, it's smart city maybe is a little bit wrong of a word. Maybe it should be smart communities. Because, just speaking of our local community in New Glasgow, I don't think that they would even suggest that they could be. But I think that they could be very easily become a very smart community. And I do like the parking start, because it does generate revenues, which then revenues can then be used, the additional revenues being found from these smart meters and the efficiencies found can then be used to fund additional smart pieces of that puzzle.
Sure, and if we're going to be investing in these kinds of things, would you suggest that we start with any kind of revenue-generating infrastructure, whether it's parking or transit or even affordable housing units where it has revenue coming?
I do. I think it's important to at least start the ball rolling, because I do see the blocker typically is the revenue piece. So if a city can generate revenue off the hop, that ball starts rolling and that snowball starts getting bigger to help fund additional pieces.
Sure. And I know you mentioned in response to Monsieur Aubin's question the potential to jump on sort of electric vehicle chargers. I see global trends kind of moving this way. I saw the Netherlands last year mandated by a certain year no more gas vehicles. Is there something the federal government can do to help spur research and development to ensure that the innovators in our communities are taking advantage of these global trends?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Any funding that a privately held company such as my own could receive to promote Canadian business, promote Canadian technology to be used in Canada, it would be fantastic. I mean, I do business all over the world, and I see trends all over the world. And the government of Canada has the ability, with the companies that they have in their country, to harness and utilize Canadian-built, Canadian-made, and also, promote and put in initiatives to help municipalities use Canadian products.
Excellent. Mr. Lazenby, just wanted to touch on the need to sort of build fiber infrastructure. Is the right way to go about this for the federal government just to be doing it directly? Should we be creating funds that municipalities can apply to? What's the best mechanism to actually get the infrastructure in place that you've mentioned?
I think it's the regulatory issue. If we look at some of the smartest cities in the world, none of them have had their infrastructure built by the private sector. So the Bells and Teluses and the comparables of the world, none of them have been able to put in sufficient bandwidth to make a city smart because it doesn't work out for them financially. And it's not because they're bad guys, it's just their business model doesn't allow them to make those kinds of investments. So I think just like we took the independent water and independent road out of the hands of the private sector, I think that we've got that kind of opportunity here. And I think your mechanism for doing that is probably the CRTC, where they can encourage that kind of behavior. Nobody wants to have to go to court to try and do the right thing, but that seems to be where we are now. If we look at St. Louis, Chattanooga, Barcelona, other cities where they've done this, it has to be led through government regulatory freedom, if you'd like, so to set it aside. And I think now's the time for that too, because if we look at the larger organizations, if we look at the Bells and the Teluses, they have stopped making money from the fiber and started making money on content. So I think they're ready to have that conversation now, but somebody needs to take the leadership, and frankly, I think your body is the best placed.
Okay, I think that's it for my time. Thank you.
Désolé, merci beaucoup.
Thank you indeed. I'll give the floor to Mr. Badoué for 6 minutes.
And I really want to go from where Mr. Fraser left off and Mr. Reyes was actually discussing with respect to funding, and this is a question for all of you. The gas tax funding, and coming from the municipal sector myself in a previous life, I understand the challenges that we have trying to play catch-up with our infrastructure, water, wastewater especially, but also roads and facilities and things of that nature, that our asset management plans continually squeeze our existing budgets. So with the gas tax funding, it's always been money used to play catch-up for those different pieces of infrastructure. Now we're talking about existing and incremental infrastructure, like digital, for example. And it was mentioned earlier about a funding source. So my question to you is twofold. Would it be appropriate that, based on the $186 billion that we've announced, and we're going to be investing in that money in that very infrastructure, would it be appropriate to do one of two things? One is to simply, I guess the easy way is to enhance the gas tax. And not only enhance the amounts, of course, but also enhance the other pieces of infrastructure it can attach itself to. Or two, have a dedicated fund, call it a community improvement fund, call it a community improvement growth fund, call it whatever you want, but a separate dedicated fund that would actually attach itself to existing and incremental work.
I can start if you like. I drive a beautiful 6-cylinder, 300 horsepower vehicle, which burns more gas than it should. Should I pay more tax than I am on that? Yeah. I mean, we all know that it's not good for the economy, and I should be paying more. I remember years ago going to Europe for the first time, 20 years ago, and seeing what they were paying in gas compared to what we were paying in gas, and we haven't caught up. So I think it does make sense. I think the answer to your question is both. So there should be some funding there. When I talk about urbanization, what's happened actually now is that because the urban centers have become larger and more focused, they are the closest to most of the taxpayers, yet they are the least well-funded. Most of the funding goes into the federal government, it goes down to the provincial, and it goes down to the province, or to the city. So the people who've got the most direct contact and influence with the average citizen are at the bottom of the pecking order. So anything we can do to provide them some funding, I think, is good. The second thing we can do with the other fund is make it competitive, very un-Canadian, but have people apply. So if Laval has got an idea, or Victoriaville's got an idea, or if Ottawa's got an idea, they can send that into the fund, and they can bid on trying to provide the right answer. And then you can have some adjudication that says, this is a better idea than that one. You get $100 million, you don't.
Gentlemen, do you agree? Gentlemen, on video?
Well, if I may, I'll continue in French if you don't mind, but...
Yes, I agree with what has been stated on Mr. Lazenby, to the extent that I agree that the money which is dedicated should be given to municipalities and giving them the choice for the use of that money. Of course, within a number of parameters which would focus them on the creation of an intelligent city, but the money would be raised by the federal government. For it to be spent by the federal, I do not think that this is in line with the quest for municipal autonomy.
Because, again, coming from the municipal sector myself for the past 14 years, I recognize fully that municipalities know best. Although the federal and provincial governments do provide funding for different infrastructure projects and programs, the municipalities, through their asset management plans and through their strategies, know best how to distribute those dollars. With that said, do you find, we're going to be listening to the PBO in a bit, and some of the challenges that we have with trying to dole out those dollars, both in the past with the past government as well as the current government, with respect to performance measures. And with that, those performance measures would obviously be dependent on the outcomes established by you, the municipalities, and of course, not only the outcomes, but the indicators that you establish. So with that said, do you find that through your asset management plans and through your established outcomes, that be the best model to put in place for performance measures as we distribute these dollars out throughout the nation? Any one of you can start.
Well, from my point of view, yes.
Yeah. Any other comments? Bruce, did you have any other comments?
Yeah, no, I agree. Municipalities know best, but there's a difference between fair and equal. And I think the equal thing to do is not necessarily the fair thing to do. And in this case, it'd be the guys with the best ideas get the most funding. So, yeah, provide additional funding, let the municipality do smart things with it. But when it comes to major projects, set up an $800 million fund, and people can come in and make bids on that, and may the best man win.
And with the best outcomes, the best returns on those dollars.
Absolutely.
Okay, now, and having said that, obviously report back to the federal or provincial governments so that therefore we can see where those outcomes are very strategic.
Sure.
Especially in phase 2 when we start looking at transportation-related investments based on economy and, of course, creating work here in Canada.
And we have that model.
En 30 secondes, Monsieur Lazenby.
We have that model.
30 seconds, Mr. Lazenby.
Or in the case of Ottawa, light rail project. Mm-hmm. So the federal government has contributed money towards that. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Do they have specific outcomes they have to meet? Absolutely. And I don't think anybody would feel that was an obligation.
Which is then therefore where you're going to get your performance measures from.
Right.
Great. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Badaway.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Badaway. I'll give the floor to Madame Bloch for 6 minutes.
My time with my colleague. I just want to pick up on a couple of observations that were made early on in testimony. Mr. Lazenby, you talked about urbanization, increased urbanization, and you referenced it again. When you talk about, we tend to think about this happening more in developing nations, but we see this right here in Canada. And I want to follow up on that, because is that necessarily the best thing to be happening in a country the size of Canada? And is that driven by the policies of a government or are government policies following the population? I think that's a good debate that we need to have. But when we talk about small and large and medium-sized communities, and I appreciate Mr. McKay's observation that we're not talking about smart cities. We're talking about smart communities. And so there's really perhaps a regional focus that needs to take place when we talk about smart communities, because small communities can't do it on their own, and there is an interdependence here that we have between urban and rural Canada. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to attending to not only smart cities, but having a smart rural component to what we are talking about. And then I'd really like you to talk a little bit more about government regulatory freedom, because that sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Well, I think trying to engineer the desires of the population is a really slippery slope that regrettably we're now experiencing the result of back with the community schools and some of the programs that we had in Northern Canada. That attempt to engineer society to do something that it didn't want to do didn't work out so well. So trying to do that again, I think, would be a bad idea. People are going to go where people want to go. Then all we can do is try and accommodate that as best we can. If you choose to live in New Glasgow for some good reasons, then let's try and make that community able to support that. Do we want to see the hollowing out of all of rural Canada into municipalities? I don't think so. So there is some tweaking around the edges, but the reality is that's where people are going, and especially young people. That's where they choose to be. And I think if we try and reverse engineer that somehow, we're going to be setting ourselves up for a lot of unintended consequences that might not be working out for us.
So I want to follow up on that because I'm not sure that was what I was suggesting.
Sorry.
I think my question was, how do you encourage a regional approach to the whole concept of smart communities?
Yeah. So I think the idea of, and there has been lots of initiatives, and this government currently has a plan to put more bandwidth into rural communities. The challenge with that is simply the expense. I was in India recently working with a company who's installing 25,000 kilometers of high-speed glass in the ground to connect 80% of the Indian population to 4G LTE. That's better than we've got. This is India. But they've also got 1.3 billion in a country a fifth the size of what we've got. Mm-hmm. So I think we could blow our brains out trying to get high-speed bandwidth into the final ends of the communities, and it would just be so expensive that as a business guy, from a return on investment point of view, I think that probably just wouldn't make sense. As far as the communities are concerned here, we need to beef them up. This is a globally competitive marketplace. As Karen knows, the unemployment rate in the technology sector in Ottawa right now is 1.0%. 1.0%. And everybody's hiring. This is a global competition for us to attract people from all over the world. And the most innovative people in the world are the ones who create jobs, the Toby Lutkes of the world from Shopify. I often say there's two types of immigrants, those that take jobs and those that make jobs. The ones that make jobs are the ones who want to come here. And given the current situation south of the border, we used to be number 2 in the world for places people wanted to go, and number 1. So we've got an opportunity, and guess where the most innovative people want to live? In the most innovative cities. And so to the extent that we can be that and make those kinds of investments, I think we're going to be attracting the kind of talent that's going to continue to keep Canada one of the best countries in the world.
Monsieur Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to my colleague for the time she has kindly allotted to me. Mr. Lessard, just as a segue to what you said, you are in charge of a center municipality, and I know that Bétancourt has a project for the purpose of connecting all these municipalities, and that you are working on it yourself. So how could that be carried out directly at the municipal level if the government gave their agreement to decentralize the funding? Mr. Lessa, you have 35 seconds available for your answer. I will simply say that what is wonderful is that municipalities already have some of the necessary powers for the purpose of putting forth some of their projects, including that of striking agreements within other municipalities. So if the government wanted to promote such groupings with some criteria, yes, it would be possible to work through intermunicipal agreement. Thank you, Mr. Lessard. Thank you, Mr. Sikam. Unfortunately, I will not have time to give you the time you need for your question. Thank you all for coming and appearing as witnesses, and which is now concluding our round of testimonies for the smart municipalities. And I'll ask members of the committee to be very active, because we'll be meeting with people belonging to the Parliamentary Budget Office. Thank you.
Check, check. Check 1, 2.
Bonjour à tous.
Well, hello again. We will continue our work pursuant to Standing Order 1082. We will now receive a briefing on Canada's new infrastructure plan, the first report to Parliament following the money. The report was published on February 2nd last. We have the pleasure of welcoming Jean-Denis Fréchette, the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Good morning, Mr. Fréchette. With him, Mr. Mostafa Askari, Assistant Parliamentary Budget Officer, Mr. Peter Veltman, Senior Director, Costing and Program Analysis, and Mr. Jason Jacques, Director, Economic and Fiscal Analysis, and you all work for the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Again, on behalf of the committee, thank you for being here. Mr. Fréchette, you have the floor for your opening statement. You have up to 10 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll need about 2 minutes, actually, because I know this committee loves to ask questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Vice Chairs, for inviting the team of the Parliamentary Budget Officer to appear before you to discuss our first report to Parliament on Canada's new infrastructure plan following the money.
This PBO report on following the money is the first in a series of reports on infrastructure that we plan to publish in conjunction with our regular reports, such as the Economic and Fiscal Monitor and the Biannual Economic and Fiscal Outlook. We also prepared for your committee a summary table based on our expectation of the progress of Canada's new infrastructure plan and its potential economic impact. My colleagues and I are quite aware that, as members of Parliament, the regional aspect of infrastructure spending is, as it should be, important to you. Although we monitor the provincial share of projects, the main focus of our reports on infrastructure is to provide transparency and better clarity on how funds allocated under the new infrastructure plan are being distributed across a variety of locations, programs, and projects. And depending on the availability of data on the nature and timing of these projects. This should allow Parliament to better understand the outcomes and risk associated to the new infrastructure plan, and therefore to be in a better position to hold the government to account. Suivre des investissements.
It will be challenging for parliamentarians to monitor the $12 billion in infrastructure spending, since this funding will be allocated over 2 years and delivered by 31 departments and agencies. That's why, pursuant to our legislative mandate, we will track these investments. For now, we would be happy, my colleagues and I, to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fréchette. And the fact that you're leaving a lot of time for questions is greatly appreciated by committee members. We'll start with Mr. Reyes for 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses thank you to the Parliamentary Budget Officer for taking the time to being here. I'm following this file very closely with my team, and when your report came out, it confirmed several of our concerns when we were looking at the data which was rolling out. In your chart, you pointed out that, again, this is a $13.9 billion program. $3.9 billion have been spent so far, and based on the forecasts, and I'm looking at Table 2 here, you're saying that it's $2.7 billion, which will be spent this year. In your opinion, why is there a difference between what the government had announced and what you have concluded? Thank you for the question. So now we're talking about 12 billion because the 13.8 included investment to the CMHL. I talked about 12 billion over 2 years. So it's 1.3 plus 7 billion announced in the last update. So what you're seeing in this chart, and you rightly pointed out, the announcement was made, 3.9 billion, and at the time our forecast, this was back in April, we had calculated the impact this spending could have had. But when we redid the math in February, we realized that not all of the money would be spent. And therefore, the impact we had forecast originally would not happen. So we were a little more pessimistic. Last week, we learned that $820 million would not go out. So all of the money announced would not go out as forecast. It doesn't mean it won't all be spent over 2 years. My colleague here was saying that the amounts of money to be spent will be huge, and former mayors on the committee know exactly that the money will come eventually. In your presentation, you said that there's no way to track how the money rolls out. Sometimes money is carried over to the next fiscal year. This plan is very ambitious. It's not a bad thing to want to invest in infrastructure, but how can we be sure as elected representatives for Canadians, where we have the mandate to spend their money, their hard-earned money, can we be confident? Last year, a very ambitious budget was unveiled, but now you're telling us that there's no mechanism in place to track whether and how the money actually rolls out. Well, before giving the floor to my colleague, I just want to say that that's exactly what we pointed out in our report. There is no tracking mechanism. When the minister appeared 2 weeks ago, members from his office said that there was an accountability framework which was about to be implemented in order to track for how the money rolls out. Maybe Peter wants to add a few words? The Minister of Infrastructure will review the data every 6 months. So we are supposed to be able to track the rollout. As for other departments, we are in the process of asking for new data. And once we get that, we will publish what the government has made available in terms of programs and projects. Generally speaking, other departments are not used to putting out monthly or quarterly reports. Generally, departments put out an annual report. Please understand that soon we will hit the 2-year mark. And I believe we have reason to be concerned that we still haven't seen any reports. Well, that's why we are doing the tracking. Well, good for you for doing that, and thank you for highlighting this issue. We know you're neutral, you are not partisan, and this shows that there is a problem because, after all, we're talking about billions of dollars which are to be invested. Second question. Mayors from smaller towns have appeared before the committee. But in your report, you said that the vast majority of funds will be spent in big cities, and it's clear to see that these cities are dominated by Liberal members of Parliament, Montreal and Toronto, for instance. And if we look at your numbers, it seems that most of the money will go towards big cities. So in your analysis, do you think this might change, or is that a trend which will stick? Well, my answer will be neutral and nonpartisan, but Phase 1 is concentrated in public transit in larger cities and upgrading wastewater treatment centers. Now, clearly, big cities will get the bulk of the funding, but in the long term, we'll have to see. Clearly, a town of 65,000, such as Richmond or Victoriaville, Richmond, where I come from, well, public transit is not as big and so would not require as much funding. Thank you. Mr. Frechette, Mr. Reyes, your time is up. Mr. Hardy, 6 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to congratulate the PBO. Long before I entertained any thoughts about getting involved, as I am now, I used to follow your work, and it always, lifted the green curtain, as they'd say in The Wizard of Oz, and shed light on what was going on. And I could see from those earlier reports that there would be times that people who sit now where I'm sitting would quite disagree with the way you analyze things or the results you came up with. They were always illuminating and certainly, sparked some conversation and discussion, always with the idea of upping the game. So now that I've been pleasant, no, I'm just kidding. I think that one of the questions that we've been putting to a variety of our guests here is that we're looking at this enormous outflow of money eventually into infrastructure. And certainly my background in the public sector, with the Transportation Agency in Metro Vancouver and other places, we were always kind of struggling to come up with the right metrics, the things to measure, to show that we were getting value for dollars. So, would you have, based on the work that you've done so far, which has been relatively limited in scope, but would you have any advice that you'd give us as the committee if we're putting together recommendations as to the sort of things that government should actually measure and monitor in order to, try and at least demonstrate or aim for value for dollars in these investments?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the good words. I don't know if Mustafa wants to. We don't do PBO as per our mandate. We don't make recommendation per se. So it's sometimes difficult. We as we do in our reports, we just say parliamentarians could ask this question or could follow this issue more carefully. I don't know if Mustafa wants to add something on this.
Sure. I mean, I guess the issue, but the point you're raising is very important, and we raised it in our report that typically for any program, the government now has a performance measurement framework, and based on that framework and the targets that they identified, and they follow the money and see whether they meet those targets. In this case, unfortunately, we haven't yet seen a performance framework for the infrastructure investment that the government has proposed. And that's something that we raised in our report that is lacking. And it is really the job of the government to decide what those targets are and how they're going to measure the performance against those targets. Once those are in place, then we can, as a PBO, look at those and provide an assessment with whether the objectives were achieved and how the government assesses those things.
It might be illuminating to government if you could also provide some advice as to the sort of things that actually need to be measured, because it's all about public confidence and trying to demonstrate to the public that we're doing the right things the right way. And it would occur that one of the key issues that needs to be in place for us to do our job and you to do your job is the proper framework for data collection. What do you collect? How do you collect it? Should it be, across the piece through all departments, through all ministries? Can you comment on that?
Yes, and Jason will want to add something. We collect, I mean, as Peter mentioned, for example, we contacted the 31 departments and they provided the information. All the information was not on our internet site or in the report just because some departments said that they would provide the total and the aggregate number of the projects, the value of the projects, not the individual projects not yet to be published. Jason?
No, I think the only other thing that I would add is, as Mustafa mentioned, and as well as Peter mentioned, when it comes to the Infrastructure Canada programs, notwithstanding the fact that the government, within the MOUs that they sign with the provincial governments, they do have framework language with respect to tracking performance with respect to the investments and outcomes. Looking at the performance metrics that are actually tracked in detail across the country, by and large, when you look at larger municipalities and municipalities across the country, they do a much better job of this. And that's because those municipalities and provincial governments are responsible for actually administering and rolling out the spending. So roughly speaking, like public sector spending on infrastructure across the country is roughly around $80 billion a year, of which $70 billion is actually being spent or administered by the provincial governments or municipal governments. And you don't need to go any further than looking beyond the budgets of, say, Vancouver or Toronto or some of the other, or Calgary, to actually identify where they've actually linked up the dollars flowing through the system alongside the actual performance impacts and the results that are actually being achieved.
Okay, if I can interrupt you because I have one more question. There's clearly differences between, say, the first run of the infrastructure spending, which was state of good repair, upgrades to existing. The next one is going to focus on things that are going to take a while to build. And, when we assumed government pushing a year and a half ago, we inherited over $800 million in programs that had been announced by the previous government but had not yet been approved. And sometimes these, depending on the nature of the project, building a new transit line, for instance, is a very long-tailed project. So, can you say that it is fair to use here's the monies allocated and here's the money spent? Is it fair to try and even that up on a project with a very long tail where traditionally the federal money is the last to go out the door?
Merci, M. Hardy. J'espère que vous allez retenir la question. Donc, vous allez peut-être pouvoir répondre.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. I hope witnesses remember the question because the time is up, so we'll move on to Mr. Aubin for 6 minutes. Thank you to our witnesses for being here. I have to admit that that your report struck me in the first few paragraphs. You said you would help us track the spending of this huge infrastructure program. It says that the government has not implemented a performance framework to assess the new infrastructure plan. You also say that, however, apart from Infrastructure Canada, no department has published a financial report. Following Mr. Hardy's question, you said you'd received general information but no breakdown. Is there a problem of transparency when it comes to this huge infrastructure plan? Thank you for the question. Well, Peter mentioned the transparency issue because departments are not used to reporting as frequently as the Department of as some departments are, which report more frequently. And again, we put in regular requests for information. For instance, the Department of Aboriginal Affairs does not, rather will provide general data, aggregate data, but not a breakdown. That's still the case. Is it a problem of transparency? I don't know. I think it's more a matter of information and communication. We'll see down the road whether it actually is a lack of transparency. Still, I have the impression that we had the same problem with the previous government. It seems that there's a culture which is reluctant to provide information. On page 4, you talk about Canada's infrastructure bank. And two things struck me. One, I have a problem with this idea of the infrastructure bank, which I think will end up costing us more than if the government only paid for it. It says the federal government will share some of the inherent risks with investors of this bank. So not only $15 billion, which could otherwise be spent directly for infrastructure. That money is going to the bank, which will leverage private capital, but the government will assume the risks. So on the one hand, we'll be paying more because we'll be paying between 7% and 9% to other partners who come on board, but we assume a greater share of the risk. Is that actually the best way to fund our infrastructure backlog? Well, I cannot speak to the fact that the government decided to create this infrastructure bank, but you're right, there are risks. We gave the example of Muskrat Falls. So we gave loan guarantees, and there were risks involved. But the government is assuming these risks up to $490 in guaranteed loans, or rather, $312 million. Yes, we try to anticipate questions. That's why we included this example in the report. So yes, there is a risk, and there always will be a risk. This is true for any loan the government makes, or when governments want to attract outside money. For instance, the electric train of Montreal is another example of a government willing to assume risk. My question is more specific. $300 million for 490 in guaranteed loans. Is that a reasonable ratio? Well, I think the Auditor General can speak to that, and there are all kinds of regulations that govern that kind of approval. Thank you. On page 12 of the report, you draw a line between investment in infrastructure projects and population density throughout provinces and the territories. And that made sense to me. In fact, I've already put that question to the minister. But what I don't understand is how Quebec, with 12% of the population, receives proportionately less. Or rather, Quebec got 12% of the funding but has 23% of the population. So there is a discrepancy there, and it seems there are other such examples throughout the country. Well, the charts change over time, and they will even change over the next few months. What we have now is based on the information we had in October. So this data goes back to January based on data given by Infrastructure Canada and other departments. So the pieces of the pie are going to change for Quebec and for other areas as well. Some provinces, including Quebec, tend to delay the approval process for funding. So it takes longer for some provinces to ask for federal government. Some wait until their fiscal situation is better. So again, that pie chart tends to change.
Fraser.
Thank you very much for being here today. I'd like to begin, as Mr. Hardy did, by expressing the profound respect I have for the PBO, having worked with an access to information organization at one point in time. I think the work you do is a key pillar to an effective democracy. One of the narratives that I think, rightly or wrongly, comes out of your report when I speak to people in my community is that there might be a fear that although the federal government's making investments in infrastructure, the job returns may not be there. Personally, in my community, I think there's a different experience than the potential narrative that the report creates. So just for the sake of clarifying for the public, the report deals expressly with Phase 1 infrastructure, not other projects like fisheries and oceans and small craft harbors or post-secondary education infrastructure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect. So of the Phase 1 projects that we are dealing with, that may not yet be under construction. Some of them may very well be in the sort of engineering or design phase right now. Could you offer any insight as to sort of a breakdown between what's under construction, what's being worked on as a design phase?
I'll back up a little bit.
Certainly.
Just to clarify on your first point, some of the monies that are been allocated in this infrastructure program will go to projects like small craft harbor repair and that sort of thing through Fisheries and Oceans, and that forms you'll see in the report. There's a chunk of money that they've got there. Some of those projects are there. We will be in better shape to understand the progress of the projects with the next report that comes out. We're asking specifically on project progress. So right now what we have in the database are projects, the identified start time, the identified end time, and we're asking for updates against those particular milestones. And we'll see what we get back, and then we'll be in a better shape to start to assess. In terms of understanding the phases of the projects, we may be able to get at that with the Infrastructure Canada data. I would be able to have to work with them to see if they're collecting that sort of thing. It's going to be a manual process. I'll have to ask each department and see if they collect that sort of stuff.
Sure. So on the issue of sort of milestones, one of the kinds of projects, and I think Mr. Hardy started getting at this as well, if I'm thinking about public transit, for example, if you're buying a bus or repairing an existing bus, it doesn't necessarily have a project timeline like building a new municipal water pipe does, for example. How does the fact that there may be a purchase of a vehicle under this infrastructure money factor into the report?
Well, in a previous piece of work we did back in 2009, we asked for project progress. We're asking for that again. Whether that, and really it'll be up to the project manager or the project proponent to determine at what phase that project is at relative to, you know, is it the buying of the bus, the 100% of the project, or is it 10%? So we're very much dependent upon the data that's provided to us from the project proponents. And that's really as far as we can go on that.
Sure. So on that issue, I think, and this is where Mr. Hardy, I think, left off explicitly, is it possible that some of the projects that aren't showing up as well underway under the report is really the result of an accounting practice, essentially, where the federal money, I think he said, could be the last out the door due to a reimbursement upon completion or something to that effect?
The report that we produced a couple weeks ago was fairly explicit in stating that the reason we're measuring projects identified as opposed to money spent was exactly for that reason. Okay. When a project is identified in a contract, our terms and conditions are signed off, and there's a loan agreement in place with the federal government transfer agreement, work can start. It's effectively like a letter of credit. So it doesn't mean nothing happens until the money comes back.
Yeah, on that note then, I think Infrastructure Canada's website indicates that there's about 700 or more projects that have had a construction start date identified that have passed as of today. There's really no information, what you're telling me right now, to say that that is not true or true or not true. You're simply basing it on what the allocation is, not on what's actually happening on the ground today. Is that fair?
Right now. And then hopefully, as I said before, as we go back and produce revised reports, we'll be able to get some indication, again, data dependent, on what is happening on the ground.
Okay, and in terms of the information, it's all going to come back to sort of the project proponents that provide this information, or is it from Infrastructure Canada?
In terms of the other 30 departments, it'll be the departments themselves. In terms of Infrastructure Canada, it'll be whatever they can get out of their project proponents. We won't go directly to the proponents yet. We did that last time, but we're not planning yet to do that.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that's helpful, and I'll look forward to sort of the next report.
Mr. Iacono.
Merci. Problems exposed during the previous government infrastructure spending and programming. Is there any one lesson that is most important for us to keep in mind as we go forward?
Well, I don't know. It's a tough question. As Jean-Louis mentioned earlier, we normally do not make recommendations on policy issues. But I think one of the things we have noticed is that it would be much easier for both Parliament and others that are looking at these if the government actually provides regular reports on the progress. on this program specifically. And I think that would be very helpful because they have all the detailed information in terms of who is getting the money, who is spending it, and how much progress they have made, and that would be extremely useful to have their point of view as to how things are evolving and how much success they have had in those projects.
Thank you. I'll be giving the rest of my time to my colleague, Vance.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Iacono. Just a few questions. With respect to performance measures, I asked a question earlier of the municipalities that, in fact, they would be expected, along with the province, to provide us with their outcomes or indicators, and then therefore establish performance measures. And that's something that I'll be pushing for. And the question is that, do you think that would be the obvious route to take, is to work with our partners, establishing their outcomes, establishing, based on those outcomes, the indicators that would drive that, and then, of course, from there, with their asset management plans, et cetera, establish proper performance measures?
Well, certainly that would be very useful from that end. But I guess on the other hand, the federal government is spending the money, and so they have to have their own measurement and performance framework to assess how their money is being spent and how much, what the outcomes are, and whether they can achieve the targets or not.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Second question through you, Madam Chair, is with respect to page 11 on the report, figure 1.4, which is the provincial share of projects by project value. And I'm not sure which one, but one of you gentlemen mentioned earlier about obviously big cities are going to have more value attached to it because they have obviously bigger projects, especially when it comes to transit. My question is that on the graph you state that that Infrastructure Canada does not provide lists of approved projects. My question is, was there an opportunity to dig a bit deeper? And when I look at these numbers, I do recognize that the percentages in terms of value are specified. But my question is, with respect to the actual projects that are being delivered throughout the provinces, urban versus rural. I'm just guessing, but when I look at these percentages and the value attached to it, if I was to think then a step further with respect to the actual amount of projects that are being distributed rural versus urban, I'm actually seeing more that are being delivered to the rural areas. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a chart that we didn't include that we, again, this is a work in progress. If you look at the distribution by number of projects, it's actually fairly uniform, and it lines up pretty closely to population as well, but it's far more uniform looking. And again, as Jean-Denis mentioned earlier, this is an early snapshot, which will undoubtedly change with the next report.
So as we move out with phase 1 and into phase 2, you're going to see this change dramatically.
Well, I think even as phase 1, as we get more current data on phase 1, you'll see this change dramatically as well.
So you say that very few projects are actually under construction, but according to Infrastructure Canada's own website, there are more than 700 with anticipated construction start dates for dates that have already passed. Isn't it just more of a reporting issue by municipality and provinces than a lack of projects underway?
I think it's twofold. Well, threefold. First one is we only looked at projects funded under the Budget 2016 plan, so Canada, wastewater and public transit. We didn't look at the other legacy programs administered by Infrastructure Canada. Excuse me. So some of that 700 number includes a lot of these legacy programs. Reason for that, again, we were trying to segregate Budget 2016, the new infrastructure plan versus some of the other stuff. Secondly, as infrastructure gets better reporting or more reporting from provinces and municipalities or more current, we'll be in a better position to see what's actually started on time. And that's what we're going to do, too, with our revised report.
Okay. Last question. I hear that the province of Ontario, for example, is using an allocation-based disbursement for its clean water and wastewater funding. Were you told this, and why wasn't it noted here?
Sorry, I need to. So Ontario is using an allocation?
An allocation-based disbursement for its clean water and wastewater funding. And I'm just wondering why it wasn't noted within here that that was being used versus an application-based.
we were looking at the federal level. We didn't actually go to the provinces and ask them how they were distributing the money to municipalities. We simply looked at Infrastructure Canada, how their program was set up vis-a-vis provinces.
So therefore, when you look at the performance measures, a lot of it is dependent on the provinces as well?
Oh, sure. Sure it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Fauchette, a little earlier we talked about two concerns I have. One, money that is left unspent, and second, the fact that there's no accountability framework, no follow-up on the files. One of my colleagues asked whether you have any recommendations to make. My question is simple. Is it normal for a government or a municipality or a private government? Is it normal to be told one needs an accountability mechanism, especially if you have a very ambitious plan to invest in infrastructure? Or shouldn't this be obvious? Shouldn't this be something that be automatically in place? Some kind of automatic tracking mechanism which would help you follow up on whether the government is following up on its promises. I'm not saying it should be automatic. It's more of a tradition, and it's been recognized as such for the last few years. The government is a purveyor of funding, of money, and other witnesses have said this. So the government provides funding and partners with provinces and municipalities. On that basis, when parliamentarians such as yourselves who vote on the funding need to be able to follow up, and you need to hold the government accountable on how the money is being spent. Often we talk about the macroeconomic situation, and we do not go into the details to find out whether something was efficient or done in a streamlined way. But after all, the reason why we're investing in infrastructure is because we want to make the whole system more effective, more efficient, and that's precisely why we need accountability to see if we are actually getting value for money. But that's more of an audit function rather than the function of the PBO. Over the year, we got a surprise. Municipalities were supposed to get $15 billion, but that money was put into the infrastructure bank instead. You said that parliamentary oversight will be less when it comes to this infrastructure bank. When we met with the minister and his colleagues here on the committee, I asked him a question. I asked who will choose projects, and rather how will projects be chosen for the communities? And an official answered, well, it all depends on performance and return on investment for the private investors. And as a lawmaker, I am bothered by that answer. The second question I asked is who is going to decide outside of government whether a project should go ahead or not. And the answer was, we're still working on it. So we have on the one hand the announcement of an infrastructure bank. The government has put $15 billion in this bank, and after 2 years, we still don't know who is going to be accountable for how that money is spent. Does it mean that the government and elected representatives are going to lose control over the choices made as to where the money will go? We don't even have accountability measures, tracking measures. Is it normal for us to have concerns about this infrastructure bank? It's hard to answer that question because we don't know all of the ins and outs of this bank. We don't know how it's going to operate. One thing I know for sure, the bank will not be located in Victoriaville. No, in Toronto. That said, we haven't benchmarked the way the infrastructure bank will work, but I believe there will be an announcement to that effect sooner or later. to answer your question, regardless of whether it's a program or a bank, regardless of what government is in place, accountability is the most important thing for parliamentarians who vote on money, on taxpayers' money, and how it is spent. So all of you are parliamentarians, and it's important for all of you, as people on the ground representing your ridings. And I said the same thing to the senators who also represent regions. Again, it is very important to have accountability on the ground. It's important for us as well, but it does not lie at the heart of our work. What we do is this. If the government says if the government says it'll create 55,000 jobs and only 33,000 are created, it's up to us to point that out. When the minister appeared before the committee, we asked whether you would follow up on the work surrounding the infrastructure bank. MPs are very concerned about this money going to the bank, which was supposed to go to the municipalities. Now the government says the way the money is earmarked will depend on the return on investment for private sector partners. But the minister hasn't been able to give us a concrete example. I don't think they know how this bank will operate going forward. So are you going to keep an eye on this going forward? Well, we are going to try to see how the money is spent as it's rolled out.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with Mr. Fraser. You follow the money. That's how you actually titled the report. But when, in my old days in a transit project, we would look at other factors, the social, environmental, quality of life, how the project, synchronized with the rest of the system. And sometimes measuring only, how useful the dollars have been and what results they've generated doesn't really tell the whole story. And it occurs to me that one of two things would have to happen. Either your mandate could be expanded to look at those non-monetary issues, or we need another body like you to do that. Any thoughts? I'm sorry, that was...
It's a good question. You're raising the analysis that we do with our multiplier, because that's what we do implicitly with this. Looking at all the other impacts are more difficult. It's often done after the fact or after the project is completed. So I don't know. I mean, it's I had somewhere in the other place again who raised the issue about GBA analysis of all these infrastructure, which is very difficult. So. Maybe in another life or something like that. I know if most of our one.
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, it's our mandate. We are a budget office, so we follow the money to the extent that has economic and fiscal implications, and that's really where we are. I mean, we don't follow money like the Auditor General in terms of, whether it has been properly spent or not, but our main objective is to look at the economic and fiscal implications of government programs, and that's our mandate. And if our mandate is changed by Parliament and include other things, then we have to certainly provide that information as well.
Thank you for that. I'll turn my time over now to Mr. Fraser.
Sure. On reporting practices or accounting practices, is there great variances between the different provinces or municipalities or project to project right now?
Not that we know of, no. Well, we don't really know exactly.
You mean in terms of reporting, the money that they receive from the federal government?
Either reporting or in terms of the time at which the money's received.
It is known that some provinces, as I mentioned before, some provinces, and certainly the case for Quebec, I mean, they tend to wait until the end of their fiscal year. I mean, that is a pattern that has been seen previously with other projects. For other provinces, it's probably the same kind of, they probably have the same kind of practices. The Auditor General looked at this in the past, and they found some kind of a pattern, which can be explained. I mean, there's a lot of seasonality in these infrastructure projects, as you know. You're coming from municipalities, and you know how it can take time. So, I mean, it's a matter of, and that's why I used the word vertigineux before. I mean, eventually it comes, the summer comes, the spring comes, and all of a sudden you have a lot of money being reported by provinces.
So would it be helpful if there was some kind of effort to harmonize differing practices, or maybe say we're going to go universally to a milestone-based or receipt-based payment time, so we don't end up with the perception that in Quebec they may not be getting their fair share when that may or may not be the case?
I suspect that the Infrastructure Canada and the federal government does not necessarily want to impose some kind of accounting practice to a province, and I think that's what the DM Infrastructure Canada replied to this committee a couple of weeks ago when he said every other week I think he is in contact with provinces to have some reports back. I don't know exactly the mechanism he's using, but he certainly mentioned that on the record.
So without imposing that kind of a condition on a project partner, it's going to be difficult to have certainty in the information at any given point in time. Okay, I'll take your shrug.
Following the money until the end of a project may be difficult sometimes.
Sure, and just in terms of increasing the maximum public accountability to Canadians, is there a certain kind of payment scheme, whether it is milestone-based or receipt-based, that makes it easier for the parliamentary budget officer to actually communicate to the public what's going on with the federal money?
Well, receipt-based is not terribly useful from our point of view. I think milestone on a milestone basis. And in fact, it's not even, I guess I'm just thinking about it. It's not a question I've been asked. It's a very good one. I think on a milestone basis might make some sense, because then we would anticipate a certain amount of work to be done by that point. Of course, then we require standard measures of milestones right across the system, and that's a different discussion.
Sure, but that would help you more clearly highlight for Canadians, say, how many jobs have been created on how many projects at any given point in time. Is that fair?
Given the quick time I've been thinking about it for the last 10 seconds,
Sure.
I'd say sure, probably any information right now is better than no information.
Okay, no, perfect, thank you.
May I ask Jason quickly? He's the accountant at the table.
That's the chair.
Sure. No, I think the only other point that I would raise is just by way of context. There are 15 of us, and there are close to 260,000 people who work for the Federal Public Service of Canada. And one would imagine that for the information that you're looking for and you're suggesting that should be collected on a standardized basis, one would imagine that the Federal Public Service is actually collecting that information, or at least part of it, to present it to cabinet members, so they're in a good position to actually opine upon Phase 2 and ensure that it's constructed effectively.
Okay, thank you.
Walk for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And if there's time, I'll be sharing my time with my colleague. I noted that in your opening comments, you suggested that it would be challenging for parliamentarians to monitor the $12 billion in infrastructure spending, given that it was being allocated over 2 years and delivered by, I think, 30-plus departments and agencies. And I'm wondering if you could comment on if this is a different model than has existed prior to this Parliament, where the money is going to be dispersed over a long period of time and throughout a number of departments.
You were there in 2009.
Is it a different model? I don't think so. I think for the infrastructure components, especially that being delivered by Infrastructure Canada, no, it's pretty much the same. I think what you're seeing this time around in this budget is a lot of, from the departmental point of view, a lot of capital asset refurbishment replacement money has been deemed as infrastructure, part of the infrastructure plan. There are a lot of ongoing projects, certainly with Indigenous and Northern Affairs, such as the education and the water program, that have been around for a long time, and they've been classified this time around as infrastructure, as part of an infrastructure program. So I think that's where the difference lies, is just how the programs are being presented this time around.
Okay. And does it make sense then that the the Minister of Infrastructure would be reviewing all of that under his mandate as infrastructure?
I think it's the Minister of Infrastructure is responsible for his department. And if you're looking for somebody to review the whole program, yeah, somebody might want to, but so far we've, have been asked to by Parliament to provide that sort of update.
Right. So I do understand the role of the Parliamentary Budget Officer and recognize that you provide that objective view of how money is being currently spent by the Government of Canada. And I'm wondering, I know that this report that we are looking at doesn't include the infrastructure bank, and as you've noted, there are a lot of questions around how that's going to be structured. But given the role that you play currently and some of the observations you've made about the difficulty of following the money when there are different kinds of lending structures in place, what will your mandate be, or what do you envision your mandate to be when it comes to monitoring the infrastructure bank, given the funding model that's being proposed?
As you know, and I'll let Mustafa, I'll just take 10 seconds. As you know, our mandate is under review by the government. The government indicated that they will review our mandate, provide more resources, give us more resources, not only in total, but also in terms of costing and so on. So our mandate could change in that kind of directions. I want to say something about new infrastructure. We do sometimes for a large project. Champlain Bridge, for example, is a good example of where we did an analysis of, which is an infrastructure project by the federal government, about the revenue generated by that bridge if there was a toll on it. So, I mean, this is an indication, but it's a $4 billion project. We cannot do costing or analysis of the revenue generated by, some small projects for $200,000 in a small municipality. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, just to clarify something in terms of our mandate, that under our legislation, we are not entitled to request information from Crown corporations. So if the bank is a Crown corporation, we cannot request information from them, and so they are not under any obligation to provide information to us on their activity. We can provide assessment, but we have to go based on the public information that exists.
Right. So then following the money or even the risk would be difficult.
It would be more difficult, certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Ban for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understood that the money unspent this year under Phase 1 will be spent in the second phase of the project, but the 0.2% forecast in GDP growth for the first year was based on that money actually being spent. Am I wrong in saying that there is no chance the forecast will be met given the money actually invested in the first year? Well, if our analysis is correct, you can see the numbers here on our chart. As I said, money has been blocked, and we know that as of last week, that GDP growth in 2016, 2017 is not going to hit 0.2, but it'll be 0.11. We're more optimistic going forward, but it confirms our forecasts. So last week we said that $830 million in infrastructure money, which will not be spent this fiscal year. Thank you. That leads me to year 2 of the program. So the money unspent in the first year, or the growth forecast in the first year, there is no guarantee that year 2 will make up for that. I recently spoke with mayors of municipalities and was told that when you miss the deadline for a construction season, what happens on the ground is that costs go up for the same project, which was supposed to have been completed or built before. So as this target of 0.4% for year 2 should go up since more money is going to be spent in year 2? Or am I to believe that if some money is carried over, it will not affect GDP growth? In our presentation, as you can see, we're a little more optimistic when it comes to year 2. That's why we're going to track the money, and we are going to produce reports. It doesn't mean we're going to monitor infrastructure spending, but it also means that we are going to update our financial and economic forecasts. We do this on a regular basis, and we are going to have a special section on infrastructure spending. 4 times a year is when we produce numbers, which we put in our report to parliamentarians and which will track spending under the infrastructure program.
Our time is up, but clearly everyone has a lot of questions for you, and no doubt we'll ask you to come back at some point in the future. So thank you very much to our witnesses, and thank you to Mr. Berthold, to my vice chair, for doing such a great job at the first part of the meeting. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Mm-hmm.